Welcome to Extremely Valid Points.
We're three business owners and friends who enjoy talking about business, marketing, and creativity.
Along the way, we just might happen to make some extremely valid points.
So we'd love it if you would join us in today's conversation.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Extremely Valid Points. We're really glad you're here. We're your co-hosts. I'm Nathan Sala.
I'm Jenny Sala.
And I'm Dave Wilkins.
Thank you for joining us today.
So today we're talking about 5 aspects of strategy. We're going to talk about different phases of growing our business and different aspects of strategy, different analogies for how to apply strategy, how to adjust course when you get off course, and knowing and understanding what phases of business you're in, and how to respond to those phases using some great analogies that Nathan's come up with about strategy.
Sounds fun.
All right,
let's dive
in.
So I wanted to start off and ask the question, what is strategy? Because I think there's a lot of confusion about strategy and what it is. Is it a goal? Is it a vision? I don't think there's a lot of clarity out there about what strategy is. And so I think if we helped people understand that, I think it would help drive success for a lot of different people. So what do you guys think?
Are you talking about strategy in terms of marketing or just strategy in general?
Strategy in general.
Well, I guess my definition of strategy would be creating a plan that has like an end goal in mind. Also, the plan would consider different scenarios and outcomes. And, you know, when I think it reminds me of chess. You know, when you make a move, you're always thinking 3 or 4 steps ahead. You think, if I go here and my opponent goes there, then I would go here and there. And, you know, like kind of thinking several steps ahead. That's kind of the way I think about strategy.
Good.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly looking down long term and making plans for the future, and analyzing how the decisions that I might make could potentially affect what I'm doing.
Good. So Steve Jobs has this really famous quote. It's about creativity, and he said, "Creativity is about connecting the dots." So that's his definition of creativity: is there's dots and you connect them. And that's what creativity is.
Yeah, I think that's actually a good point, because I think a lot of times we can think of creativity as almost like making something from nothing, but we don't do that. We're not God. We're basically reforming things that we already have and making those connections, seeing things like, oh, this and this, you put them together and now you've got something new.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. And so I took his definition of creativity and sort of have my own quote. There's a quote by this guy named Nathan Sala. You guys may have heard of him. But it's strategy is knowing which dots to connect.
Ah, okay. That's good.
So it reminds me of like, I don't know who came up with the zodiac, but, there's all these stars in the sky, and somebody had to be the first one to be like, it could be the brightest ones, or it could just be the ones, because sometimes it's not the brightest ones, but it's ones that sort of form a picture. And so there's creativity is connecting the dots, but strategy is like, which dots do I connect? And I don't know, to make it look like a cow or whatever it's supposed to look like. I don't know.
Yeah, and like, how do I do that? Do I go here first and do this?
Yeah. So today I wanted to talk about 5 aspects of strategy, or 5 perspectives, or 5 different ways to look at strategy. And I think it'll help people to just get a better grasp of it. So first I'll start off by saying that strategy starts with a single goal. And I say that because I think a lot of people's mistake and why some businesses fail or people don't accomplish what they set out to is because when they think their strategy is, my strategy is to accomplish all of these various goals.
World domination.
I'm going to start out by doing this and this. And it's basically like saying, I'm going to go sit in my car, turn it on, and drive to Seattle and New York. You're going to fail because if you do one and then the other, that's fine. But if your strategy is to do all these different goals, so it's important to think of strategy in terms of a single goal. I like to think of it in a goal is your destination, and a strategy is your route to get there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the 5 aspects that I wanted to kind of came up with are, the first one is think about climbing Mount Everest. So when you think of strategy, think about actually allow your brain to say, I'm about to go climb Mount Everest. And so what would you start thinking about? You'd start thinking about, what kind of gear do I need?
Mm-hmm.
How do I train? What kind of shoes do I need? What am I going to eat? Who should I go with? Who should I not go with?
Right. Yeah.
All of these things are very important parts because your goal is the destination, the summit, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you also have to get back down the mountain and survive. And so if you're going to survive, you have to choose the right, you have to predict what's going to happen, understand the elements, train for it. And most of the deaths that have happened on Mount Everest actually happened on the way back down. So I think that people strategized to get to the top, and that was their goal, but they chose the wrong goal. Their goal should have been, I need to get to the top and then back down safely. That's my strategy.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a great point. Not just focusing on that spectacular mountaintop thing, but actually the return as well.
Yeah. So your strategy is your plan to make sure that you're prepared for everything that you need to meet your goal.
Okay.
Okay, great.
So basically strategy deals with how. And so that's the first aspect. The second one is playing a game of chess. It's a very common way to think about strategy because it's a very strategic game. But when you are, as you said, when you're playing chess, you have to, all the best players can think several moves ahead. So it's all about predicting outcomes and coming up with contingency plans. So if you if you're looking at your chessboard, you think about, okay, if I move my piece here, how are they going to respond? And if they move here, I'll do this set of contingency plans. But if they move here, I'll have to do that set of contingency plans. So that's a huge part of it. And, thinking about things from every possible angle, and that's part of strategy.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I think one of the difficult things, like when you talk about chess, right? Like if you're thinking about those contingencies, if you have to be able to hold multiple possible realities in your mind, right? Mm-hmm. So if I move here and then my opponent moves there, then 5 moves down the road, it could happen like this, but what if they move this way? So what are some practical ways that that we can think about contingencies but not get mired down in like all the possible realities? Like you said, if you try to drive to New York and San Francisco, did you say LA or San Francisco?
Seattle.
Yeah. If you try to drive 2 different places at the same time, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
But you may have things come up along the road. So how do we balance the multiple possibilities without slowing down or getting too mired in details?
Yeah, I think that's a great question because in chess, each move ahead that you think, the complexity increases exponentially.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
the branches
out.
complexity.
Yeah.
So the more moves ahead you think, the more complex it is. And with business, if you want to apply it to business, it's not that complex. So I think practically, you do need to think ahead a few moves. For example, what if there's a recession in 6 months? What will I do?
Yeah.
Well, I'll save X% of each project and plan for that.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Or what if I lose a key employee? How am I going to make up? Get projects done and all these types of things. So it's not as complex as chess, but.
Yeah, I think that's a good point because with business, you can generalize a little bit more, right? Because you're not looking at, as you said, okay, so I need to plan for a challenging time that might be, and maybe that's because the economy goes south. Maybe it's the pandemic hits. Maybe it's, just weirdly a bunch of my employees, have something happen to them. Whatever it might be, you maybe you don't plan for that specific, like a specific move. But you say, I need to make sure that something that I'm not expecting, I'm accounting for that.
Right. It's almost like, making sure you have enough gas in the tank to get to where you're going.
Yeah.
So another thing I like about the chess aspect is that it is a game and you are playing to win. So, in chess, you have to make sure that your king doesn't get captured. You need to make sure that you put your opponent in checkmate by, all of these different moves. And I think in life and in business, anytime you have a strategy and you can kind of think of it like a game, like I need to win. Mm-hmm. And I do think that helps for some reason.
Yeah, and like how aggressive am I going to be? How defensive am I going to be? Right,
Sure,
Mm-hmm.
your styles.
Yeah,
that totally plays into it. And then another thing I like about the chess aspect is that, each of your pieces has its own strengths and weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
A bishop can move this way, and the queen can do pretty much whatever she wants. I bet
That's right.
You like that one, don't you?
I sure can.
Knowing all of knowing basically your capacity and your capabilities and the strengths and advantages of each of those things will set you up for winning strategically.
It might be worthy to note at this point that Nathan's number one strength in the Strengths Finders is strategic. And so Nathan is an expert at strategizing, and he does it without thinking. Like it's second nature to him. And so I think he's the perfect person to talk about strategy.
Well, thank you. And your number one strength is also strategy. And your number 3 or 4, right?
My number 37th is memory. So
I know it's in your top 5 too.
Yeah, actually, I think it is.
Maybe
4
2.
or 5. No, let's see. I have to look it up.
Anyway,
but yeah,
it's in there. So we're all 3 strategists. A very high strength for us. Okay, so the next aspect of strategy, or the next kind of visual image, if you think about strategy, think about sailing a ship across the ocean. And I'm talking about one of those like 17th century, pirate ships with all the sails and that kind of thing. Because you have a destination, and your goal is to get to your harbor across the ocean with your crew still alive and all your cargo intact. So that's your strategy. That's your goal. That's where you're headed. And what I like about this aspect is that there's no roads. You can't always know that you're on the right track. You don't know if you're on the road or off the road because there is no roads. And there are uncontrollable forces all around you. And this is not unlike life. It's not an exact science. You can't control the weather. You can't control the wind. You can't control the water or the waves. All you can do is just periodically
respond.
Respond,
right?
Yeah.
You have you know what you're going to do if that happens, or you know what to do if that happens. If if the wind just starts to change direction, then you know how to shift the sail.
Sure. Yeah, and you do that, I was going to say, by calculating your position. Getting across the ocean, you frequently have to say, where am I? How far off course am I? How do I get back on course,
Mm-hmm.
And then, okay, so I need to turn the wheel a little bit and then get back on track. Because in life, you are going to get blown off course. It's not a matter of if, it's when.
Right.
And that's okay. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the message of this lesson of the ship crossing the ocean in strategy, is that you're going to get blown off course, and that's okay. It's not an exact science. It's not going to go perfectly according to your plan. You're going to get to your destination by zigging and zagging across the ocean.
It's good.
Right.
And so if I create a plan and it doesn't work, it doesn't mean I failed.
Yeah, I mean, you failed hard, but that's okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And
It's not the end of the story.
yeah, hopefully, as long if there's a giant squid situation or something like that.
Well, but I think like what you're saying with the strategy is that you plan for some failure, some degree of getting off course, or some degree of something where you're going to have to make that course correction. And so if we just kind of imagine that everything's going to go perfectly and nothing's going to go wrong, that's a poor strategy.
It's the most unrealistic strategy.
It's almost planning to fail.
Yes. Because if you don't, I love how you said that. Extremely valid point. You have to plan to fail a few times on your way. Plan for stuff to go wrong. Plan for unforeseen things to happen. How can you plan for something you can't see or you don't know what's going to happen? But you just have to think through, well, if something happens that I can't see or couldn't control, what am I going to do? The person who's spent a little bit of time thinking about it, maybe they never came up with the actual plan, but if you've at least thought about it, then you'll be miles ahead of a person who's like never even thought about it and is dumbfounded by the fact that there's failure involved in this whole deal. And they'll, that person would be more likely just to be like, I'm done. I quit.
Yeah.
So the fourth aspect of strategy is flying a rocket to the moon. And so this is a little bit like a modern version of sailing a ship across the harbor, but the lesson with this aspect is that you sometimes your destination is always going to be the same, but your phases have to change on the way. So like when you think of a rocket launching, same as when you launch a business, it requires an explosive amount of energy and just a tremendous amount of thrust and power just to lift that rocket off. And it's almost like it's happening in slow motion.
Right.
Same with you're starting a business, unless you have like massive amounts of seed capital to like speed things up a little bit. For most small businesses that are just bootstrapping it, it's going to take so much energy with hardly any payoff and hardly any, fruit to show for all your labor. So the thing I like about the rocket to the moon strategy is, first of all, there's that complexity that happens when, through the different phases, because at some point your whole strategy has to change, not because your destination changed, but just because you're in a different phase. So like there's that thrust phase, and then you break through the atmosphere, and then all of a sudden you don't really need much thrust. It's kind of like that ship. You're just sort of making little micro adjustments along the way. But then you get to the point where you have to land this rocket on the moon, and the whole thing has to get flipped upside down. So you have to sort of predict the different phases as you go to your destination and how everything might change except the destination and how you're going to have to evolve to that scenario.
You said a few minutes back, you said that unless you have a lot of money, you have to put a lot of energy into it. But I think even if you have a lot of money, that's still a lot. Money equals energy, right? There's a certain amount of force that has to go to get yourself off the ground. And it could be you need a whole bunch of capital, and that's how you make it happen. But it could be also a lot of extra energy, some really great creative ideas, some outside of the box thinking that gets your brand noticed, something like that.
Sure. That's a good point.
Thank you.
You don't always need lots of cash. There's ways to do it without cash.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it does take a lot of energy, a lot of force, a lot of something to get something off the ground, right?
Yeah.
Right. And then, continuing with this rocket to the moon analogy, you also, just like when you go to Everest and you get to the top, you need a way to get back down to Earth.
Extremely valid point.
Yeah.
That is a whole other skill set as well, right?
Yeah.
Well, because I remember like when that was the whole moonshot thing, and that was part of the thing is we want to get a man to the moon and bring him home safely. It wasn't
not kill him in the
it
process.
wasn't like there he is.
Yep. You can still see him up there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Really good. Another part of this aspect that I like is this mission control, where there's a team of brilliant geniuses in a room watching everything and helping you monitor everything. So it's like this massive support system that's helping you achieve your goal. And I think in our lives, we can build support systems through partnerships that we have or vendors or, different things like who is making sure, who's helping me be accountable to doing the things I need to be doing, getting to where I'm going to be going. I think it's a huge help to a strategic
Absolutely.
effort.
Yeah.
And that's just downright wisdom, having a team of people. If you're a small business owner, you need a CPA, you need a lawyer, you need a mentor, you need a team of support people that are helping you. There's so many different aspects of help that you need that you can't know it all, and you need to know you don't know it all, and you need to be okay with asking for help and sometimes paying for help because usually it costs you something to get help from a lawyer or whatnot. But thinking ahead and getting that wisdom, getting that knowledge and insight from people who are experts in those fields before you make decisions, I think is so important because otherwise you learn the hard way. Right?
Yes, true.
You learn by making mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes can really cost you
Totally true.
and take you way off course.
Right. And the nice thing about, if you make a mistake on the rocket, you're dead. The whole mission failed and people have lost their lives. But in business, there's a lot more grace. You can make mistakes and recover for them in most cases. So it's not as serious as the moon shot. But, it's a good way to look at it. And especially like sometimes you might need different systems or different people or different skills to tackle different phases of your operation.
Like a business coach or a marketing team. You need to hire outside consultants that can help you. And I think a lot of times there's so much we can do on our own, but then we'll hit a ceiling. And when you hit this ceiling, that's when you need to call in for help and get an expert that can tell you, okay, here's how you move out of this level. Here's how you get into the next phase.
No, it's true because when you're starting out, you might know a little bit about all these different aspects, right? But then you can't specialize. You can't, like you're saying, can't go to New York and Seattle at the same time. You might know how to get to both places, but you need somebody that is proficient with each phase or each part of the ship or whatever analogy you want to use. But not only are they're dedicated to focusing on their task, they know more about it than you do. And, maybe they're leading a team of people within your organization that are going to help you just propel you forward.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so the fifth aspect of strategy that I wanted to talk about today is building a tower, building a tall tower. And so if you think about it, if you're going to erect this massive building into the sky, structure is important. You have to, the structures that you build, and sometimes you have to even start underground, but the structures that you build to make a strong foundation are going to determine how high you can make it. And so if your goal is to make it extremely high, you got to make sure you have the right support system. Again, the support system is very important, but also just more sturdy things, constants
Pillars.
in your life. Yeah.
Yes.
Pillars. And these are things like character, integrity, and expertise and, wisdom, things that are just going to help you build taller, great people skills, great leadership ability, all of these things. There's the quote from my main man, Jesus. He's my favorite human to ever exist in the whole universe. But he said, if you're going to build a tower, you got to count the cost. And so a strategic aspect of this building a tower is, and he said, because you don't want to get halfway done and realize you don't have enough bricks to finish this thing,
Right.
So this is part of strategy and planning is really saying, okay, how strong does my support structure need to be? How many bricks do I need, or how much rebar do I need, or how much concrete am I going to need? How many exact tons, get specific.
What's it going to cost me? How long is it going to take?
What is the price of mortar and bricks? What's the price of, am I going to do it myself? Am I going to hire labor, or how much do they cost? If you're in California, it's going to be expensive. Lumber, all these things. So that's just an aspect of strategy to think about. So when you think about strategy, thinking about climbing Mount Everest, or what was the other one?
Sailing the ocean, going to the
Rocket.
moon in a rocket,
Playing a game of chess
playing a game of chess,
Yes.
and building a tower.
and building a tower.
Tell us what you guys think about these aspects of strategy. If you guys have any other ones that are your favorites, drop them in the comments, and we'd like to hear about it. But before we go, it's the part of the show where we talk about what we are
Inspired
by this week.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a quote from our fellow podcaster, Marie Forleo. She said, "Success doesn't come from what you do occasionally. It comes from what you do consistently."
Yeah, that's a great perspective.
Sure is. And being consistent can be part of your strategy. It's one of the most not exciting aspects of your strategy. I think we always want things to be exciting and new with twists and turns, and now, and the building part and making decisions and moving forward are always the fun things. But sometimes it's the day-to-day, getting the work done, being consistent, not giving up, that really pays off. And with marketing, consistency is really what pays off. Most of the people who say marketing doesn't work are the ones who aren't doing it consistently, aren't measuring it, don't have goals in mind, don't have a plan or a strategy in place. And so consistency should be a pillar of any strategy.
It's good.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think about the overnight success stories, right?
Yeah.
That's like they're an overnight success. It was 10 years in the making
Right.
or whatever. And it's true. It's just that it's easy to see that person that made it big and did well with one seemingly stroke of luck, but really, if you almost anytime you can look at that, you can see that they've been working away at their craft or what they do for a long, long time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think if you plan for consistency, that would help, So plan to fail, plan for consistency. If you plan to fail consistently, you will be a successful person.
Well, I think a great example of that is this commitment that we've all made to this podcast, right?
Right.
We've said, we know this isn't going to be an overnight success, and it's quite possible it might not ever become the next big thing, and we're okay with that. But what we have done is we've decided and committed that we're going to consistently stick to this for 100 episodes. And that's because we know the value of consistency, and that, I probably won't even get, our podcast probably won't even get that good until after we've done 100, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So stay tuned for good content.
Yeah. I don't know. Are you guys familiar with Ira Glass from This American Life?
No.
Another great radio show podcast. But he has a saying that basically the idea is that we get frustrated because our taste is up here, and then we're trying to make art or whatever it is that we're trying to do. It's rising to that level, but we don't have the experience yet, right? So you have to put in that time so that you can get your abilities and all the things that you have, all the things that it takes. You have to be able to acquire all that skill, knowledge, practice, et cetera, until you can get to the level that you know that you want to be at. And it's frustrating to think about, hey, I know that's the destination, but I've got to, I know that it's 10,000 miles away, so it means I have to go 10,000 miles before I get there.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
And if you have 10,000 miles to drive, the strategy you have in place is what keeps you on course and helps you to learn as you go, adjust as you need to, and keep yourself from going 15,000 miles if you don't need to, I think it's so important to have humility and to recognize you don't know everything. You're still learning. You don't know what you don't know. But mistakes and failures are amazing opportunities to learn and to grow and to get better.
Yeah, I think it reminds me of driving 10,000 miles. Most of that time, you're kind of just sitting there doing nothing.
Mm-hmm.
You're not driving by anything exciting. Nothing really exciting is happening. You're just sort of grinding it out. But in those moments too, I mean, for me, that's when I do my best thinking, when I'm not really doing anything else, just a long drive.
Going through the motions.
So it's a grind, and I think consistency, you have to consistently keep driving, to get there.
But you can't stop at 5,000 miles and say, well, I tried to get to New York, but this is, I just can't go any further.
Well, I think it's easy when you don't, you can be on your journey and you feel like, well, I feel like I should be there already.
Right. Are we there yet? Are we there yet?
And the feeling, because of all the stuff that you've done, all the miles you have behind you, yes, it feels like I'm tired now. I want to be there, but I know that I'm not there yet, so I have to keep going.
Yeah. Cool. Well, good conversation today. Yeah. And thank you guys for joining us. We appreciate it, and we will see you next time.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for spending time with us at the Extremely Valid Points podcast. To learn more about this episode, see our show notes at extremelyvalidpoints.com. Be sure and subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you download your podcasts. Join us on Facebook at facebook.com/extremelyvalid. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Instagram at EVP_podcast. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time with some extremely valid points.